I said before coming to Brussels that if I couldn't get adequate safeguards for Britain in a new European treaty, then I wouldn't agree to it. What is on offer isn't in Britain's interests, so I didn't agree to it.
You might think this is a good day for, how about UKIP and Nigel Farage? Let's ask him. He joins me now from Brussels. So you happy?
Well, on the face of it, hooray, a British Prime Minister does something decisive and vetoes a treaty. But then you think about it and you realise he's actually gained nothing. The reason he couldn't get a special deal for the city is his negotiating position was too weak. If he'd said, look, give me this or we're leaving, I suspect he'd have got a deal. And my real worry now is that our financial markets, our biggest industry in our whole country, is now extremely vulnerable, because every time the bond markets twitch or the euro has a problem, Mr. Sarkozy will say it's those dreadful Anglo-Saxons in the City of London, let's regulate them even more, and we find ourselves in a European Union in a permanent voting minority and the least popular we've ever been. So I do fear for the future of that industry.
On what grounds can you claim that if Mr. Cameron had threatened to leave the EU, that Mr. Sarkozy would have put a gold wall around the City of London?
Well, I think that if you go into negotiations in Brussels, you have to be very, very tough. You have to carry a big stick, or you're not going to get anything. And I suspect Cameron went in thinking he was going to get a deal, didn't get it, exercised the veto, and if he thinks he can come home and that Eurosceptic debate will have been appeased by this, I think he's quite wrong.
That's not what I asked, Mr. Farage. I asked you, on what grounds do you think the French would ever agree to a gold wall around the City of London simply because we threatened to leave? You know Mr. Sarkozy's attitude to the city.
I think he'd have had a better chance of getting that deal. But either way, we've come out of this with nothing. Not a single power has been returned. Sarkozy told us where to go, and we're now in the worst of all worlds.
All right, Mr. Farage, thanks for joining us there. That's what the UKIP view is there in Brussels. What does the Labour Party make of it all? Joining me from Glasgow, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, Douglas Alexander. Mr. Alexander, would Ed Miliband have vetoed this deal?
I believe we'd have negotiated a better deal for Britain. I don't often find myself in agreement with Nigel Farage, but when he asks the fundamental question, what has Britain gained out of David Cameron's positioning and posturing last night, the answer is absolutely nothing.
Why would the French give us a seat at the table? They've already told Mr. Cameron to shut up.
Well, exactly.
Why wouldn't they tell you to shut up as well? Do you think Mr. Sarkozy would sit and listen to you?
Because this has been the consequence of a shambolic and ill-judged negotiation strategy stretching back months. Only a few months ago, David Cameron was telling Chancellor Merkel he didn't want to be in the room. That's what he told Chancellor Merkel as recently as March. So I'm not surprised that other European leaders, to be generous, have been confused as to what David Cameron's position is.
The position basically is that the other member states threw down the gauntlet and they wanted to move towards a political union. What they've actually come up with may well prove to be outside the treaties anyway. The bottom line is that he's created a path towards full renegotiation of our relationship with the European Union, which has been well overdue. The causes of the present troubles in the whole of the European Union come from the structure of the treaties and overregulation. That's what he's
say
tackling.
Full renegotiation is a euphemism for getting out.
I mean,
just be honest with us, Mr. Cash. It's a euphemism for getting out.
It is actually now a path which we have to follow, which will actually end up by our entering into a new relationship and looking outwards to the rest of the world.
Why do you think the Germans or the French have any interest in creating a new relationship for Britain? They're more likely to say, which of course this may be your real plan, look, either accept it as it is or get out.
Well, that may well be the end game, but I'm saying that at this juncture, he's done the right thing. First of all, and I quite disagree with.
But you'd like that end game, wouldn't you? Come on, fess up to us, Mr. Cash.
I believe that we've now reached.
I see a smile there.
I've seen a historic turning point both for the Conservative Party.
Just say it. I want to get out. Get it off your chest. You'll feel better for it.
Andrew, I know you want me to say that.
Well, it's because you believe.
There are now several months ahead of renegotiation to take place. Then we will know. We haven't seen the detail yet. We are going to hear on Monday when he comes back from the summit in the House of Commons. We are now on a new path. It's a historic moment for Britain and for the Conservative Party.
This, again, is a simple question that demands a simple answer. Does what Mr. Cameron does what he's done in Brussels have Lib Dem support?
I think because he's stuck within the agreed lines, then probably the Lib Dems are very disappointed, but they'll have to concede that, you know, it was a dangerous game and he played and lost.
But what should David Cameron do now?
That's exactly the point. What can he do now? Because the point is, he went in with very few demands, really. Very, very weak demands, and he got nothing, right? Which is why he didn't sign up to this thing. Which suggests to me there's nothing he can get from the EU. Incidentally, what was quite weird about the whole debate was Cameron is actually going in asking for the power to regulate the city more heavily than the EU wants in a key area, which is capital requirements. Because so it's actually not as simple as he himself has led us to believe here. It's just where he was in favour of the city was on the Tobin tax and not relocating exchanges outside the city.
But I'm actually not quite sure what all this is about. Because last time I looked, we had a major European sovereign debt crisis, which needed funded now, which needed the ECB to do something, to print money or to do Eurobonds, which needed the Europeans to come up with a massive shock and all bailout fund. None of this has been talked about.
No, that's
What's happening?
Well, exactly. Nothing really is happening. This is really a revamped version of the Stability and Growth Pact, which was agreed during the Maastricht Treaty, in which these countries are supposedly already signed up to, which was to be responsible when it came to their fiscal policy. So what this is now saying is, actually, we're going to have a bit of a harsher system, and therefore, hooray, everything will be sorted, which means that the European Central Bank will be relaxed and will be willing to buy lots and lots of European bonds. But it's already said yesterday it's not going to do that.
Well, the key thing really came not from this kind of rather side warfare between the British and everybody else. It was the president of the European Central Bank. He said, we ain't doing Eurobonds, we're not going to be a lender of last resort to governments, and we aren't even going to shovel our money around the back door to the IMF for them to give it back.